هو السميع العليم أعوذ بكلمات الله التامة كلها من شر ما خلق. This is dua. Go to makedua.com and just look for this dua, or just look for the dua of protection from the Prophet ﷺ. In any dua book and you'll find it. You should be reciting it every single day. Look, freak accidents happen to people every single day. My parents live in the Middle East, and I was there. One of the last times that I was there, this father was going to drop off his kids at school, right? And in the Middle East, the heat is pretty severe. So what he did was he dropped off all the kids except one. The toddler in the back was strapped into the car seat. So he goes to work. He completely forgot to drop off this kid, and he goes into his office. 4 hours later, he realizes he left his little daughter in the car seat. Comes out, she's dead. Comes out, she passed away. When he saw this, he thought there's still a chance, so he drove her to the hospital. He got to the hospital, and when they told him that no, she's no more, he died. Got a massive heart attack, and he died. And then, as we're reading that paper, and my sister has a little child, and we were reading, so we started crying. Because we were like, this can happen to anyone. This guy had done nothing where Allah would give this person this punishment. Nothing at all. Right? Not that we know, but there's no one can live with something like that. Freak accidents happen all the time. Things that are just inexplicable. For that, the only insurance we have is this dua. You should be reciting this dua on a daily basis. After Fajr and after Maghrib 3 times for sure. For sure. My teacher, Shaykh Hussain's hadith teacher, when they covered this hadith and he taught them this dua, this hadith teacher, Shaykh al-Hadith, actually had this massive heart attack one day, right? And he had this surgery, and alhamdulillah, he survived. So as he's reciting this dua, and he said, if you recite this dua, nothing will ever happen to you, right? Now the students are sitting there like, wow, this guy has some serious audacity. He had this massive heart attack, and now he's talking about this. So they're thinking this, and obviously a teacher is a teacher, so he knows, I know what you're thinking. Right? He goes, I know what you're thinking. Firstly, death is death. Death will come whenever it has to come. You can recite all the du'as you want. You will still die. Right? You can't do anything against it. But I survived because it was not my time. Now, as far as the freak accident or this thing happening, wallahi, that was the only day in my life when I forgot to recite that dua. Only day in my life I forgot to recite that dua. And Allah taught me my lesson, and I went right back to reciting it every day. So, so there are certain things that are avoidable. Those are the freak things, and you need to recite that dua for them. Certain things are inevitable. Death in the family. That's inevitable. Then, there are certain things that sometimes something will happen, and a person will come and tell you, this is what's fair in it, Allah intended it this way. Number one, if your friend is really depressed, please don't go say that. That makes no sense for you to go say that. You can think it, and it's definitely true, but the last thing this person wants to hear is, I know you just failed, but good, alhamdulillah, Allah intended it this way. It's completely insensitive. You'll never get this person to like you ever again after that, right? So don't say that, right? In most cases, when people are depressed like that, all they want is for you to listen. Most people are average smart on that same level. You can't come up with an ingenious way to spin it to them where they're like, yeah, that's the silver lining. I completely see that now. Most people need a time to console themselves. They need to work through their feelings. They need to realize, it's just a factor of time. You can't, the minute something happens to them and then you go and tell them, well, that's good. You can't do that. Right? Most people need the time to grieve. They have their own processes, and then they deal with it a certain way. Now, I'm not saying you become an absentee. You need to sit there and you need to listen. And I'll tell you the most powerful thing. And this is the only thing I ever do. When someone comes and tells me they're in a difficulty, because I usually don't have good advice to offer. This is the only thing that you can do, and this is something Shaykh Hussain taught me very, very early when I started studying the deen. He said, honestly, this is not like an abstract feel-good, happy, none of that. Just make dua for this person. Really, as I say this, it sounds like, oh, he just said a very nice thing. No, making dua is a right. It's a right that every believer has on another believer. How much time do I have? Oh, just keep going. Lock the doors. Look, let me tell you one quick story, and this will really highlight to you the power of dua of somebody else. In about 2006 or 2007. My mother contracted this African virus, very, very rare African virus. And when she caught this virus, this is incurable. Okay? This virus has only two outcomes. You either die or you live. Okay? And the only way for you to know is if there's no fever after the 4th day, the fever goes down after the 4th day, the person will survive. If there's a fever on the 5th day, then they're very close to death. Another 2 or 3 days, they'll pass away. Now, when she got this, I used to be with the United Nations, so I was on some assignment where I couldn't leave the country. I couldn't leave whatever country I was in at that time. So I couldn't leave the country for another 2 or 3 days. And she had already had the fever for 1 day. 1 day. Now, my family didn't tell me that she had this, but eventually it came out, and when I heard it, I'm a son at the end of the day. Those were the 3 most difficult days in my life. I did not get off my musalla for a second. I would cry and I would pass out. When I would wake up and I'd remember, I would cry again and pass out again. Maybe I had a couple of glasses of water at that time. In those entire 3 days, I think I only drank water. And even the water that I was drinking, every single drop of water made me think, how will I go on in my life without my mother? It's a tough loss, It's a tough loss. On the 3rd day, there was only one thing left for me to do. I got on the computer and I wrote an email to every single one of the students that was in my madrasa, who I loved to death, right? And these were all other students of ulama and mashayikh. I wrote to them and I wrote, look, I know that my mother belongs to Allah. And Allah can take her back whenever He wants. It's His right. I have no claim on demands here. But at the end, I'm still a son, and I still need my mother. And I wish that Allah would just return her back to health. To this day, I have no doubt in my mind, 100% in my mind, because of their du'as, Allah returned my mother back to perfect health. Okay? It can be anything. I don't know. But in my mind, it was their du'as. Immediately, I knew. Some people emailed me and told me what they were going to do. I will recite this much Quran and don't worry about it, we're here for you. Some people offered, I'll fly out to wherever they are. All kinds of things. But I knew each and every single person on that email made a dua. 100%. This is a right we have on each other. This is not the equivalent of someone's uncle just died and this person turns to you and says, can you make dua? You're like, oh, inshallah. No. One day you will need these du'as. You will go in the grave. Your parents will go into their graves. And you will turn to someone and say, please make dua for them. You'll be so lost. You'll be completely orphaned. All you have to rely on and bank on at that time is that person is going to make dua for you. That's it. And if you can't even rely on that, if you don't have that sense of responsibility to each other, we're nowhere. Nowhere. Then let's talk about the things that just sometimes, so for example, right? Sometimes you didn't study a single day in the semester. You never went to any classes. Then you failed an exam. Then someone comes and tells you, alhamdulillah, this is the way Allah intended it for you. Now you react and say, this made no sense, right? And you say, I don't understand that. What share can there be in this? I just lost my GPA, right? What that statement means is, number one, it's quite possible that you did not take advantage of 1, 2, or 3 of those asbab. You didn't study properly, you committed sins, and number 3, you didn't turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in dua. You took advantage of none of those 3. What that statement means is then, right, that when you did not take advantage of those asbab, you turned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in tawbah and istighfar. Now Allah had initially, if you had taken advantage of those 3 asbab, right, Allah had put certain khair in your reach. You could have gotten that A. Allah put it in your reach if you had just spent the time studying, if you had just made sure that you had a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and if you had just turned to Him in dua, Allah had made this accessible to you. Okay? Now, when you did not take advantage of these 3 things, right? When you did not take advantage of these 3 things, if after that you realize and you turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in tawbah and istighfar, He brings that khair right back into your reach. He doesn't make it inaccessible. He doesn't take it away from you entirely. He doesn't close the doors. That is what that statement means. That whatever khair Allah has intended, Allah has kept that khair for you if you just took advantage of it. And some of our ulama write that if a person turns to Allah in true tawbah and istighfar, then perhaps they will get even better than initially the khair that they would have gotten through those first 3 asbab. Now that doesn't mean you get lazy and fail in every class first so you can come back and take it a second time and perhaps graduate magna cum laude, right? But what that means is that sometimes there are just certain things. Sometimes you missed out on a job. You didn't get that job, right? But then you turned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you really, really turned, right? And Allah gave you a better job. I know many people like that. And then people will come and say, alhamdulillah, truly, Allah saved me from that first job. Allah saved me and Allah gave me my second job. And that brings me to the most important form of tawakkul. Something that you and I need desperately. And that is tawakkul in terms of the deen. That we trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we depend on Allah, and we have faith in Allah that Allah will bring us closer to Him. That Allah will bring us closer to Him. That's really, there doesn't look like there's a lot of food here, so you probably didn't come here for the food. But you came here and everyone comes to the MSA on some level or another to reconnect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is really, you should, even if you think that that's not your purpose, right? And Allah has put you here for a certain reason. Actually, I'm surprised there are these many of you on campus right before Thursday comes around anyway. But the fact that you would go to any religious gathering, the fact that you would go to anything that has remotely to do with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have to understand that you have to be very, very grateful for that. Very, very grateful, honestly. Because you can be anywhere else today. Anywhere else. Allah could have put you easily, Allah could have taken you out, you had to go do something else, right? Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Right? You could have just gone and done something khair, some good, a favor for somebody else. But the fact that Allah would put you in here, right, is in and of itself a very, very great thing. It's a great act of mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And for you to understand that means that there is a part of me, even if I think this guy's pretty boring and I'm dozing off right now, even if you think that, there's a part of you that truly, truly wants to reconnect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Truly. And then even in that situation to have a certain degree of tawakkul and reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah said in the Quran, قُلْ مَتَاعُ الدُّنْيَا قَلِيلٌ. Tell them that this whole world is very, very little. Now, if you need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give you rizq, to give you a job, to give you a wife, to give you a house, to give you all these things, certainly you need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the deen. Certainly you need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the deen. Now, for many of us, we might think, I can't wake up in the morning for Fajr. I know that I've been committing the same sin now for the past 4 years, and every time I do tawbah and istighfar, I'll come right back to that sin. Well, the true form of tawbah is not for you to make istighfar and say, I will never do this sin again. You should say that, but you should go one step further. Ya Allah, this is the most I could do. The most I could do is bring it to my lips, now you make it a reality. Allah is that powerful. Allah wants to take you out, He will take you out. But you're not relying on yourself. When you do tawbah and istighfar, don't rely on yourself. When you turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in deen, don't rely on yourself. Look, you might be at fault for not waking up at Fajr. But that's one side of the story. This is one bare minimum thing you can do, right? The night before you go to bed, you say, Ya Allah, I have tawakkul on you that you will wake me up for Fajr. Ya Allah, it's a simple statement. I'm not saying it's a silver bullet, you'll definitely wake up without an alarm clock. Still have an alarm clock. But what I'm saying is, it's a very, very basic and simple act to do. Ya Allah, I have tawakkul on you that you'll wake me up for Fajr. Ya Allah, I have tawakkul on you that you will bring me khair in my deen. Very, very, that's what I'm saying. Tawakkul is one of the easiest things. Dua is one of the easiest things in the world to do. Doesn't require wudu. I mean, there are adab of wudu, dua, certainly. Doesn't require wudu. Doesn't require sitting in a masjid. Doesn't require turning towards Makkah. Again, adab. Doesn't require knowing Arabic, nothing, absolutely nothing. A person just converted, became Muslim, knows nothing about Islam, this person can make dua. It's the one thing we don't take advantage of. We'll pray, and then after prayer, it's and you just get up and leave. And the best of us will make a dua, like ordering off a McDonald's dollar menu. Ya Allah, give me a house, a job, a wife. That's it. Right? And it's the same laundry list. And it's a very, very quick, it's essentially like you just walked into an office, your subordinate walked in, hey, go take care of X, Y, and Z. There's nothing to do with, Ya Allah. This is why gaining nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very easy. There aren't a lot of people out there that are like, Ya Allah, please make me close to you. Think about that young man or woman who turns to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that one silent moment at any point when they're alone. Ya Allah, I know that my life just does not look like something that you'd be attracted to. But if you could just bring me near you. Just one simple statement. It doesn't have to be accompanied with anything. You don't have to pray before that. Just make the statement. That's all tawakkul is. Just to bring yourself into a state of mind where you can truly say that Ya Allah, Allah, do this for me. And many times because of that, we underestimate our own ability. We've sold ourselves short because we don't do tawakkul. We think that, okay, I've got to do this on my own. I've got to do this on my own. And when I fail then I'm going to leave everything. And Shaitan's playbook is very clear on that. The minute you fail, he comes to you, yeah, well, forget about it. You already missed Maghrib today. What's the point in praying Isha? We'll just start fresh from tomorrow from Fajr. We'll just start fresh tomorrow from Fajr. You guys are thinking, wait, that's the exact same thing. Our ulama have written all these books already. There is no surprise in Shaitan's playbook. This is the exact same thing, right? And so for you to then take tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I'm going to get right back on it. I'm going to get right back on that horse. Because, look, failing is inevitable. You go to a talk, you hear something, and something sparks in you. You were walking by the AMS room, there was no one there. For some odd reason, you thought you'll walk in and pray 2 rakahs nafil and make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whatever it is, you decide you're going to do it, and then Allah really turns around for you. For some odd reason, you're crying. There are chills going down your spine. 27th of Ramadan, for some reason, this guy's recitation you've been listening for the past 4 years, suddenly it hits you really hard. Whatever it is, it hits you. Eventually it goes away. That's the reality of it. Your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, eventually it will go away. But then for you to think, if it went away, I have to come right back to it. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Ya ayyuhan nas antumul fuqara ila Allah, O mankind, all of humanity, you are faqir. You are needy in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And Allah wants us to ask of Him. Right? And that's why sometimes you'll just get so depressed, you'll think, well, why am I doing all this? Right? What is my purpose in life? Because we don't have that talluq, we don't have that relationship with Allah, that Allah will take care of everything. Right? Inna Allah yuhibbul mutawakkilin, that Allah has muhabba, He has love for which people? Those who have tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The final thing, one of the final things that I want to talk about is understand that the connection of deen, between deen and dunya, is not that you compromise on your deen. Not that you compromise on your deen. Very, very basic concept. Look, when I graduated from college and I started working, right, my teachers gave me 2 excellent pieces of advice, which to this day, I use it on a daily basis for work. First advice was, and this applies equally to college students, first advice. Number 1, work so hard that tomorrow if the entire company or your firm or organization winds down and it starts shutting down, you're the last person they think of letting go. Work so hard that you become the most indispensable asset to your organization. One of the side benefits of that is you then not shaking hands with women is not the 13th thing that's wrong with you. Right? Or you disappearing on Fridays for an hour and a half for some reason is not a really bizarre thing. Then they're thinking we need to really get rid of this guy. Right? It works so hard that you become a true superstar in anything that you do. Second advice. Understand even then sometimes you will not be successful. And that's okay. And the second advice is your first and foremost job title at all times is you're a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is your first and primary job title. Doesn't matter if you're an ER position, doesn't matter if you're the president, whatever it is, salat time is salat time. First and foremost, if their requirement is that you miss Jummah every Friday, quit the job. Allah will feed you. Sounds like an extreme thing to say? Allah will feed you. Allah will take care of all that. Allah did not tell you that you need to go become CEO of this company. He told you you need to stay as a servant. Your first and foremost job title, all the time, always, is you're going to remain a slave. So whenever you're faced with a decision, is there slavery in this decision? Will I still remain an abd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this decision? Very, very simple. And I'll tell you that people who take advantage of these asbab are very, very successful. Every single person in my madrasa class is a very, very well-accomplished individual. You think, seriously, there are people at the DOD that walk around like this with a turban. There are people that work at major law firms in New York City. Skate Narps, one of the partners, completely 100% Sharia compliant guy. 100%. Law firms, investment firms, whatever it is, just think about the apex of any career, all those people are 100%. There are people in every single thing. And that is your responsibility today. Our generation does not get to say, I'm going to go off and become an alim and that's all I'm going to do. There needs to be a subset of people to do that. But then the rest of us need to shine in everything that we do. Academia, studies, the religion. But when it comes time for a trade-off, the trade-off is going to be on everything else other than the deen. Everything else other than the deen. The Sharia and the Sunnah is the Sharia and the Sunnah. You don't change that. Because that was not your responsibility. Nobody told you that. Nobody told you need to become a partner at a firm. Allah told you need to, when you appear, إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. Your heart is pure. And understand, even if you make those sacrifices, you just won't be successful. Because at the end of the day, Allah will do whatever He wants. Look, Adam a.s., what was his principal goal when he eats the fruit? This isn't rhetorical, seriously. When he eats the fruit, what is his goal? Speak up. Somebody. So, his goal was to what? Stay in Jannah forever. Right? Stay in Jannah forever. Shaitan comes to him. وَقَاسَمَهُمَا. They swore. He took an oath. You will stay in Jannah forever. His goal was to stay in Jannah. Allah's goal was what? He's going to go to earth. What happened? Went to earth. Nuh a.s. wanted to save his son from drowning. He says, Ya bunayya irkam ma'ana. Come with us. Come on the boat. He's pleading, begging with his son. Allah wanted what? Him to drown. Ibrahim a.s., Ismail a.s. committed. I will sacrifice my son. He decides I will sacrifice my son. He says, I will sacrifice myself. My father got wahi. فَمَنْ أَسْلَمَ. They were content. They were content on that decision. Allah wanted what? No. What happened? What Allah wanted. Prophet ﷺ decides, I will not eat honey anymore. Just didn't like it. Decides he's not going to eat honey anymore. Allah says, Ya ayyuhan nabiyyu, lima tuharriku ma ahadallahu lak, tabtaghi mardati azwajik. Eat it. So he starts eating it. At the end, whose will was fulfilled? Allah. So you can try it. Put in all your effort. Fight as much as you want. Do whatever you want and you think you'll become successful. Allah doesn't want it. It's not going to happen. So you might think getting a job at, not to blow up anyone's spot, but if anyone has an offer from Citigroup, but if you think working at Citigroup is going to get you a really big leg up, you're going to become very successful in life, right? It's a bank. I just got too brutal there. It's actually interesting. In my graduating year, Citigroup gave out 79 offers. At some point, they just stopped meaning anything to us because everyone had an offer from Citigroup. That's the only reason I picked Citigroup for that. Fair. Now, sometimes Allah of His hikmah and masla can give it to someone, right? That this person, he's not pious, he's not making dua, he's not making effort. Allah gives them wealth, Allah gives them success. He can do that. It's His tadbir. Now, sometimes that person doesn't make any effort, but they're really righteous. Allah gives them the dunya. That's one possibility. Another possibility is that this person is making all the effort, but he's left the deen, he's left dua. He has decided he's going to give up on iman, he's turned away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala completely, right? And even then Allah gives it to this person. Question is, number one, do you really want to take that chance? Do you really want to take that chance? And number two, right? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that there are some people that we just keep giving, hatta farihu, they become very happy. They become very happy with themselves. And then suddenly, all of a sudden, we give them punishment. Can be dead. All of a sudden, they're dead before they know it. There was a sheikh pretty recently. He's a friend of mine. He actually saw a dream. A dream is a dream. Don't take it more than a dream, right? So a dream is a dream. So he sees this dream where he sees. It's a very long dream, so I'll just tell you one small part. So he sees that he's in a bed, right? And he's pretty convinced that he's dead, right? Now on the bed next to him is a mufti. A one of the muftis we know, right? He's from Michigan. So he turns to the mufti and he says, he took his name, he's like, is this real? Are we really dead? Is this akhirah? And the mufti said, yes, it is the akhirah, right? Again, it's a dream, right? So he says, yes, it is the akhirah. So then the sheikh, he says, is it too late to make istighfar? Is it too late to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in repentance? And he says, the mufti had tears coming down his eyes and he said, yes, truly it's too late. So then the sheikh, he went silent. The mufti from nowhere, he just raised his hands and he started making dua. And he said, well, as a servant, there's only one thing I can do. I can only plead with my Lord. And he started pleading with his Lord, and the dua he made was, Ya Allah, you know that I make X money. And this person makes a lot of money. He's a professional as well. So he was making sort of like this 6-figure salary. And he said, you know, I never did israf. I never wasted any of this money. I never lived clamorously. I gave away most of my money on charity. And he was making dua basically using his amal, where he was saying that, Ya Allah, just on the basis of this, won't you just forgive me? Won't you just forgive my actions and just enter me into some corner of Jannah, right? So he's making this dua. Now the sheikh thinks, right, that, well, he has that dua, I have nothing, right? So as he's telling me this, I'm thinking, you know, at least you're a sheikh, right? So then he starts making dua. Now when he's making dua, he says, this is the dua I made. I started saying that, Ya Allah, you know that I had an intention to give $1 a day in charity. $1 a day in charity. I know I never got around to it, but you know that I wanted to consistently give in your path. Just on the fact that I wanted to do that, can you not forgive me? Right? Can you not forgive me? Now, first thing that I took when he was telling me the story is that, number one, small and consistent actions go very far away. It's just $1. Most people have $1, right? It's just $1. Even if you're a college student, you have $1 a day, right? So consistent but small actions, they go a very long way. The other thing that tells you is that death is anywhere around the corner. You know, when I was at Stony Brook, I remember we used to go to janazas. Me and Muhammad, who's a very, very close friend of mine, he and I would go to, sometimes we went to random people's janazas, right? We just find out someone was at Selden, they were going to get buried, and so we had nothing to do. So we would think, you know, let's just accompany the body, right? And in the hope, for Muhammad and I, the hope was that, you know, if we go, you know, we're not pious, but perhaps someday if we die and we're buried, perhaps a stranger will come to our burial as well, right? And so when one of the times we went there were these 4 kids that were getting buried, and I was in, you know, we were in our junior or senior year, and the kids being buried there were like 16 or 17. 16 or 17, they died in this car crash, right? So I mean, this is just around the corner. Things just happen like that, right? And death is right there. So, if you are able to attain tawakkul in small things, in quizzes and midterms and things like this here, look at it as a practice ground. Eventually you'll be able to do it in all the big things. You'll be able to do it in all the big things. And I want to close with 2 or 3 things. Number 1, we just went through a set of days, Dhul Hijjah, which is essentially a celebration of Ibrahim a.s., right, and his sacrifice. Now, you look at Ibrahim a.s.'s life and it boggles your mind. Just completely boggles your mind. First, Ibrahim a.s. was never an idol worshipper. He was what we call a Hanafi, right? A Hanafi. A Hanafi is that person who didn't necessarily receive wahi, didn't receive revelation, but they were a believer, right? So that's what the Prophet ﷺ was before he became a prophet. He was a Hanafi, right? He knew that, you know, idol worshiping was not right, but he knew the concept of God, but he didn't know who Allah was or what Allah was, right? And so Ibrahim a.s., what does he think? The stars must be my Lord, but the stars go away, so the stars cannot be my Lord. The sun must be my Lord, but the sun goes away, the sun cannot be my Lord. The moon is so beautiful, right? The moon must be my Lord, but the moon goes away, the moon can't be my Lord. So then his conclusion is, then the Creator who created all these things must be my Lord. Now, he came to Iman on his own. Became a Hanafi. Allah gave him that hidayah, and then he became a prophet. Now when he becomes a prophet, he goes into the Kaaba, he goes into, or the Makkah area, and what does he do? He starts smashing the idols. While his father is an idol maker. A very well-known and prominent idol maker of the time. So now when he does this, he gets completely thrown out, and he says, you need to leave this town. Right? And that's a very, very difficult thing to do. You don't just, in those days, you don't just walk 30 miles or, take a train and go to another town. Yeah, okay, I'll live here and get a job. Right? It's very difficult. They threw him out and he left. So now when he leaves, then eventually he gets married. So first time he has to leave his family because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but because he loved Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Out of his tawakkul. But out of his tawakkul he left. Then he gets his own wife and child. Allah says what? Leave them here. Leave them here and go. Again, what? Just purely based on... Now, he lived an entire life of his youth of loneliness. Now, he has his own family. He has to leave it again. For tawakkul. He leaves. He leaves. Then comes time, after all those sacrifices, an entire lifetime of sacrifices, he decides now he is going to sacrifice his son. Allah saves his son. Then the two of them make the Kaaba. After they make the... I understand that I'm fast forwarding through the story. But then they make the Kaaba, and what's the first thing they say after they make the Kaaba? Astaghfirullah. After all that, you would think they'd be like, Ya Allah, I did such awesome things. Allah grant me the highest place in Jannah. No. Astaghfirullah. Entire life of just constant sacrifice, just even in terms of prophets, just his sacrifice is remarkable. So his qadr was what? Allah did what for him? Number one, the place where they stood and made the Kaaba, he made it a place for musalla. He made it a place for people to pray for all of eternity to come. Hatta that you and I now, we fight with people and people fall on us so that we can just pray on that little corner. What else did he get? It's remarkable. Think about the number of prophets that came through the line of Ibrahim a.s. Shuaib a.s., Yaqub a.s., Yusuf a.s. Through one son. Through the other son? The Prophet ﷺ. Think about the barakah that Allah kept in his lineage. Just from that tawakkul and that sacrifice, which even by prophetic standards is very, very, very strong sacrifices. But he did it purely what? It's very difficult to say, leave your wife and your child in this valley. Makkah is very, very harsh terrain. Even now, and now they have right? But back then, it wasn't even like Medina. Like you walk a little, you walk 10 miles and you come across an oasis. It's Makkah. Leave them here. Purely on what? Allah will take care of it. The Prophet ﷺ, he gets the message. His uncles turn against him, right? His tribe spurns him, and then he's told what? Leave your town and go to Medina.